we have a presentation by Passage Engineering, and I asked Jerry Goldman from Wood Grove Yacht on a potential senior housing development at 799 Holt Road, the former lumberyard site. So Jerry and Sarah.
I think Sarah and I have talked a little bit, and I'm at least going to start until someone pokes me and says, you have to stop. My name is Jerry Goldman, for everyone who doesn't know. I'm an attorney for 799 Holt Road, LLC, whose principals are here this evening. We have Kimberly Glazer, who's in the front row. We also have Louis Fico and Greg Kimber, who are here, and Sarah Kostic is the president of Kostic Engineering. You hit that right on the head, Mr. Supervisor, and is the project engineer for this project. As I said when we were walking into the building, I've had a long history with this property. You said a lot of people have come in and talked to you. A lot of people have talked to me about this over the course of many, many years. This property was originally used for Webster lumber, and it was zoned industrial. There was ultimately a comprehensive rezoning by the town. It got zoned OP Core North, which does allow senior housing with a PDD and a special permit. A lot of people have shied away from the property because of the buildings that Greg and Kimberly and Louis had graciously taken down on this property once they had acquired it. And also there are some wetlands which provide some challenges on the property in terms of design of the property and the overall site. But with the good work from Kostic Engineering and the leadership of the ownership team, they're able to put together a concept plan, a site plan for the 65.7 acre property, which does make a lot of sense and also addresses a long-standing comprehensive plan goal of the town itself, in that the way this is designed, the roadway ultimately would connect with Abigail Way, which takes us all the way out to Hard Road. And it's been a long-term objective for the town to see a connection between Hard Road and Holt Road, south of Clem, north of the 104 Expressway. This project, if developed as proposed, would allow us to go ahead and do that. The project itself contemplates senior housing because that is what is allowed with the special permit and the PDD on the site. It's a total of 361 units, which is a density of 5.49 units per acre, which is substantially less than the density which would be allowed in a typical residential district. Typical residential district density is about 8 units per acre. So we're on the low end relative to the amount of this, just because of the large site that we have those numbers. We're talking about a mix of townhouse style units. We have 16 4-unit structures, we have 1 3-unit structure, 4 2-unit structures, and we have 11 26-unit multifamily development structures depicted on the site. We would contemplate that the area east of the creek would be developed first on this site. The Kostic team took great care to provide for generous setbacks along the trail on the north and from Holt Road on the east. The process that we have to deal with PDD is to have us come here to this board and to have a public hearing on whether PDD could be utilized, and that is only the topic of what that public hearing would be. Then we would be moving on to the planning board for essentially a site plan review, and then return back to this board at the end of the process for the special permit for the senior housing. So we're at the first step of a multi-step process. And we can work out all the logistics. If the plan and the concept makes sense, what we would request, kind of similar to what you had discussed on the previous PDD, is that you consider on November 7th, calling for a public hearing on the PDD authorization. We think that it can be held as early as the 21st of November, because the OP Core North, or excuse me, the PDD code doesn't specify the length of time for publication, but it says after proper public notice. So that, to my mind, and in accordance with standard zoning practices, a 5-day notice should be sufficient. So I believe we can get it into the Webster Herald and can get it to the 21st. We can work out all these logistics between Charlie and Josh and us and everything else between now and the 7th. But what we would be asking for, if the concept is acceptable, to have you consider this, to have us go and to hold that public hearing, to take that initial step, which really doesn't bind anything other than to essentially send us to the planning board for the fuller site plan review. I think I'm within my 5 to 7 minutes that you allow.
Now, Jerry, that's not what I said. I said the best practice is if you present in 7 to 8 minutes, you give yourself 7 to 8 minutes for the board to say.
Correct.
You can talk for 15 minutes.
Correct.
and
No,
just
I want to give the board the opportunity to ask the question, so
All right.
I wanted to follow the direction. I want to keep you on schedule. I think Paul's the main event tonight, you know, with your budget, and we certainly aren't going to infringe on that time. So, so I don't know if, Sarah, you had anything you want to add at this point?
I don't, but happy to answer any questions.
Great, and I'm sure our ownership group as well.
Is there a way to get the second slide up so people can see it at home, people can see it in the boardroom? Because this is the 361 units, the next slide. And I just want to make sure, the only question I have.
Let me walk through that.
Yeah, that's it. What's north?
North of here is Cambridge,
Well, I know that which way is north.
I'm sorry, north is the top.
In this case.
North is the top. This is why I'd like to see all plans.
So is the road that is meandering through the bottom third, that's the extension of Abigail?
Essentially,
Okay.
right.
Proposed. Okay, I did a lot of talking at the last agenda item, so that's all I wanted to know.
If you want me to take a minute and walk through the plan, I can do that too. If anyone needs some assistance, let me just point out some things with regard to it. On the northeast side, we have primarily townhouses. We have one unit in the southern part of the road on the property, which has a multifamily building as well as a clubhouse and pool on the southeast corner of the site. And then as we develop north, we have a mix of the townhouse type units and the multifamily buildings. As you see the road on the site that goes from east to west or west to east, it does connect, and the reason why it goes down and dips that far is that's where it would connect with Abigail.
You mentioned the multi-story buildings. Which ones are those? Can you clarify that for me?
Those are the bigger buildings that you see. Anything, there are a series, I should have Lisa pointed, but I don't with me, but if you take a look at the buildings pretty much along the Oak Road frontage going back to the crossroad, north of the main road, those are all townhouse type units.
Yes.
And then there's one building to the south, which is a multi-story, you know, is an apartment building unit.
Right, that was the one I was really questioning, because you talked about the others being somewhat buried into the site, but that one appears to be right on Holt Road.
Yeah, and frankly, when you take a look at it, I did the approval for the project across the street. If you if you take a look across the street on that site, that has got a similar size and similar type building right there.
Right.
Their townhouses are further north, so we actually match up kind of townhouses to townhouses, and we match up apartment building to apartment building.
Okay.
So we have some congruity and consistency with regard to the project design.
I just want to say that when I saw this in my inbox with the agenda item and all the information on it, one of the first things I did was look to see if there was that connectivity with the road, because as you said, it's a long history. I have somewhat of a long history sitting in this seat.
Yep.
Charlie's been here all that time too, and that is something that we always were hopeful that we would be able to do. So I looked at it, I called Josh for confirmation on it, and I'm really pleased to see that portion of the project.
It's a wonderful step-by-step over the course of the years. I mean, it started with going from hard road and structuring it so that it could connect if something were to happen on this property, and now potentially something could happen on this property to complete that connection.
It's great.
Agreed.
Any questions, comments? Jennifer?
No questions, I think it's a great use for the area. It's commensurate with other buildings in the area. There's definitely a need. I know when I was on the planning board years ago, there were so many projects being brought forward for senior housing. And one of the things we would say is, Webster, where life is worth retiring. But there really is a need for this.
Oh, yeah.
This housing, and I think this would be a good use for that space.
I gotta say, I was saying earlier that in the 5 years that I've been here, Josh, you've been in on the meeting, we've seen 5 or 6 renditions of proposed development here. But it wasn't from the current ownership group. I think you were looking to sell to people and they said, well, before we buy it, we want to see if the town likes our idea. This by far is the best looking idea I've seen. And that's without names, somebody came in, Josh, 950 units. They were proposing 950 units. That's pretty funny. I like how I'm assuming the wetlands, and there's 15 or 20 acres on that 70 acres, and you, I would think, probably built around it.
Yeah.
That's why there's a lot of, I'll call it green space in there. It delves in the details, and we can talk about this later. Charlie, our town attorneys in the stand. Interesting, I've always been taught no less than 10, no more than 20, but then on local laws, no less than 5, no more than 10, put it in the paper for a public hearing. But if we can do it, like you said, I have no problem queuing up a resolution on November 7th, and if we can do the public hearing on the 21st, Josh, I think the way our code is right now, if the public hearing goes well on the 21st, then the board has to refer it in a resolution that day to the planning board.
That is correct.
It's kind of we're looking to change that eventually, because it's an added step. But that's our code right now.
Yep.
And then Jerry and Sarah, do you see, I mean, you gave Jerry what you thought the path was, it would end up back here for the special use. Is there variances? Would the planning board say, you gotta go to the zoning board for that?
As it stands right now, we're not contemplating any variances from the code for this.
Yeah?
We're good.
And Sarah, I mean, this is the attorney hour. The last one was, let's get the attorneys
Sure.
together, whatever. It's kind of the same thing here. If that 5-day, as he just said, is okay, does the board have any problem with
No.
us not doing a resolution to set a public hearing
No.
for the 21st?
I'll confer with Mr. Goldman.
Yeah.
We'll work
If
through
I'm
that.
okay with it, then I'll message.
That would be wonderful.